Hi, everybody. We have Harsha, co-founder of Questbook here, and we're here to talk about how grant programs should be run, what successful grant programs look like. So before we get in that, Harsha, can we take a step back and try and understand why grants are so important in the Web3 ecosystem?
Sure. See, the regular workflow in Web 2 is always that there are few, like at least in the software industry, there are few developers who are working full time. And these are the core contributors towards that company. They know the in and out of that company. A lot of the documentation, materials, everything is known to that specific community of developers. And these are full time working at Web 2. The whole concept of composability and also open sourceness of Web3 has broken that particular barrier. Now, all this reading material, all the documentation is out there. People who are enthusiastic, passionate about that particular development are going out there and contributing. Now, in the Web2 parallel, you'd see that these people own up this company, saying that, hey, we are the people who are working for, say, Google, Facebook, and they own it up, right? Like, this belongs to us. We contribute here. These are the particular guidelines with which we contribute. Whereas with Web3, anybody is allowed to do that. There is this permissionless work. You don't have to have some kind of permission. You don't need to have. There is no barrier for you to go and contribute, right? Just this whole methodology has created scope for freelance work, people to outsource modules of this work, collaborative work. So this eventually led to outsourcing almost the entire development of a particular protocol, and they needed a system. There was a huge requirement for a system where funds should flow to these developers, and also has to be tracked. Like, this is a parallel to how you do payouts to your employees in Web2, but in a whole different way, more modular, more radical. So yeah, this itself is the foundation for grants ecosystem in Web3.
Yeah, that's great. And I also like how this whole grants thing fits right into that FAT protocol thesis that is so talked about, where you build a permissionless protocol and then many projects start building upon that particular protocol, and then it creates like this value flywheel, value generating flywheel on for both the projects, the protocol, and the users at the end of the day. So I personally like how Web3 kind of unlocks this whole different flywheel using the grants program. So
That's true. Go ahead.
No, that was it. Yeah.
No, I was saying, like, whatever I've explained is from the protocol side of things, whereas there is developer point of view for the whole grants ecosystem, which we generally don't touch upon. How projects view these grants, how developers view these grants as it is their good. Like, grants in Web3 space are used as a go-to market, right? Say if I got a grant from Polygon, I get access to their community, I get access to their resources, I get access to their material, I get guidance from the core development team of protocol, I get vouchers, and it's in the best interest of both protocol and as well as the applicant that the project has to grow. There was never such an incentive mechanism ever existing in Web2, where both sides of the parties are trying to push you unless they are your investors, right? So this is like zero equity investment.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that the number of projects that are actually built on top of the protocol, it probably is the only moat there is for a protocol. If your code is open source, you don't have like a tech moat as much. But the number of projects that are there, I think that creates like great network effects among these projects, and also creates like a moat of distribution on the protocol itself. So I think it's a great situation that we are in using grants. So
Yeah.
my next question to you would be, if let's say I were a founder who's built out this protocol, or I'm building a project and I want to build out on a protocol, what is the best way to run a grants program? What are these moving parts that are there? What are certain things that have to be in place for a grant program to be successful?
So see, there are two ways in which a protocol runs grants. Majorly, like there are like tons of grants, retro grants, bounty grants, and like at least 20 to 30 variations of grants. But if you majorly put them into two buckets, one is the open grant, the second is where the protocol knows what needs to be built, right? So in the case of open grants, like the way Polygon runs it, they are open to welcoming new projects. Like the applicant can come up with a new project and you're open to fund it. Whereas few protocols like say Perpetual or Ocean, they run a very specific grants program. They know what needs to be built. They have a RFP. They know a liquidity provider what needs to be built, right? Now, when the protocol has a clear picture, it's a different way of running a grants program. It's more like, hey, this is a requirement spec. I need to hunt for developers who have previous experience in this particular specialization. Now, if it's open grants, the approach is entirely different. Open grants is more dApps to be built on top of your protocol, so that more transactions happen and therefore your coin value goes up, right? So majorly there are these two different buckets. However, the fundamental principles remain the same. I'll talk about the failures of grants programs, so that those are the things to be fixed first. A lot of people who have a lot of protocols or even labs and foundations which have started off with grants program, they're shut it down. One of the major reasons for such programs to be shut down is that they felt that grants is free money for developers, but no value add for their either labs or foundation or other protocol. This happens when there is no alignment of what is getting built and what needs to be built for the protocol. When you do not have a clear roadmap of what needs to happen on top of your protocol, that's when things fall apart, right? So the best way to deal with it is involve your developer and DevRel and your developer teams as part of your grants program. So Ethereum does it in a very smart way. They do it using delegated domain allocation. And that is what even Questbook does. So using this model, what happens is there are particular domains in which the projects are, projects are taken for review. Like the applications fall into this particular domain. Say it could be security or developer tooling or dApps, right? Now, for every domain, there is an expert. The expert is from their particular community. Say if I'm running it for Solana, the Solana community has its own experts in their particular field, say DeFi, say games, right? They run that particular vertical and they are given a budget. Like say I have a $500,000 budget, which I need to disperse exclusively for gaming projects, right? And because I am an expert as a domain allocator, I have, know the nuts and bolts of what happens in this domain. I get to review, approve these projects. What's interesting is we have done a small tweak to this method. That is how Compound runs its grants program now. With 3GB 2.0, what we do is we involve the Compound labs and the foundation team before the final approval of application happens. Right? Whenever you are involving your core team for approving your final transaction, that ensures that there is alignment between the project and the roadmap of the protocol. I think this is one piece which most of the protocols miss on. Either there is an exclusive grants team where they treat it as a marketing altogether, or they try to involve your developer team entirely, and because of the bandwidth, they won't be able to, scale that. Or the other way they run it is they have a grants manager from their core team, but there's a blind spot on multiple domains. So the way to fix this is have 4 to 5 domains, let the community experts run that grants program. The grant manager coordinates these domain allocators with the core team of the protocol. This ensures that there is an alignment of the projects This also ensures that the experts in their particular field are approving the projects, and these are the people who are from the community, so they know the ethos of that particular protocol. They ensure that the projects are aligned by default. So yeah, this is a robust model which has evolved over the last 2 years, which has been working across the protocols like Ethereum, Compound.
Got it. Got it. This is very interesting because a lot of these grant programs, especially for protocols that have a wide range of use cases, for example, a Polygon, for example, a decentralized storage protocol, there's so many things that can actually be built there. You need to form, maybe not siloed is the wrong word, you need some verticalized experts to come and help the developers or the projects to actually build on that protocol with the expertise in both the protocol and that particular vertical. Correct. And
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So can you draw parallels to maybe a real life example of how this has been carried out? For example, a protocol that did it extremely well, which a few people can look at.
Sure. Look at it this way, right? For Ethereum, Devfolio is one of the domain allocators. Right now, when Ethereum has a huge fund, Devfolio is an expert in running these hackathons. Now, that is their segment. That is their expertise. They are from the community, and their expertise lies into hackathons. So they have a budget using which they run the entire hackathons for Ethereum. Now, when you give it out to these experts, it's like a delete button on your brain, right? You're allocating that particular bandwidth, and all the grant manager or the fund manager has to worry about is what is the performance of these particular domain, right? That is a solid example. Like the way Ethereum runs it through Devfolio is a solid example of how the domain allocator mechanism is working. The exact model which I have explained with respect to domain allocators and domain allocators coordinating with grant manager, then with the labs or foundation, is going live with Compound. CGP 2.0 is going to be run in that particular model of TDA.
Understood. So again, one focus is on the developers through the hackathons, but is the true success of a grants program with where projects are being built on top of protocols and there are users coming in paying those gas fees and or the protocol fees or whatever that is? Because is that the true success of a grants program, or is it just the number of projects just deployed on the chain or protocol?
See, number of projects, more the number of projects deployed on chain is more like a spray and pray method. The actual success is where they are looking out for Uniswaps to be built as part of this, right? So for Ethereum, one of the Ethereum Foundation's person has put it in a very smart way. He said, hey, now Uniswap Foundation has more funds than Ethereum Foundation. Uniswap was one of the projects which came out of a grant from Ethereum, right? They took a $50,000 grant. It's not the number of projects. It's the quality of projects that are being built. It is that potential of these projects that are getting built, which can, in Web2 world, you say viral, but the projects which goes big, more transactions happen on this part. Like virality in Web3 is more transactions, right? So you need projects where more transactions happen. That is when your token is put into use. That is when your coin value goes up, your overall fund goes up. I think it's pretty straightforward. The more projects is to end, because like nobody would have imagined Uniswap to go this way, right? And so most of these open grants is a spray and pray. They get more projects to assume that one of this goes really big, similar to how investments work.
Yeah, very, very well put there. Yeah. So, and when you look at the success of, say, a Uniswap that came out of a $50,000 grant, it's just amazing to see how this has actually played out and how grant systems actually work in Web3. So let's say now I, as a founder, I'm completely convinced, hey, I need to run a grants program. Now, my main focus as a founder or somebody who's running the grants program would be to attract the highest quality of projects coming in and building on top of the protocol. One is definitely the capital to be deployed. So say a $50,000 grant is a lot of money, and one is definitely the capital portion of it. How else do you think a founder can attract the right uh, developers, other founders or projects to come and build on top of it? Is there a playbook there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I had to learn it the hard way. So yeah, it's not just the capital. Most of the folks think it's just the capital, but see, Harmony had huge capital as compared to any other grants program, but there are more quality projects which were running on Solana and Polygon at that point of time. Capital is not the only incentive. It's also the resources. It's also the resources from whom these projects get guidance. It is also the networks. Like if you ask a lot of people who are applying on Polygon grants program, it's not just the money. They also get a lot of vouchers. They get a lot of auditing vouchers, marketing vouchers. They are also Polygon is well connected and they connect within the ecosystem. Same with Solana. So resources is 2, networks is 3. I think these are 2 major pillars apart from capital, of course, is one, but these are the other 2 major pillars which shouldn't be ignored. When you are low on capital, but you have really good connects, most of these projects also look to get into the ecosystem or get a grant from a particular Web3 company to get into that ecosystem. Like find that right network, find those right people, get guidance from the right resources, get access to the right resources. Yeah, this is a missing piece in the developer ecosystem right now. There are really high quality developers who are not just looking out for capital, but also looking out for the right mentorship and connects to the network.
Very, very, very interesting. And actually, when I look at one project that came out of Solana's grants ecosystem, I think it was Zeta I think it was Zeta Markets, where for the first time yesterday, I saw a DeFi derivatives protocol volumes for Solana as the underlying asset actually overtook centralized exchanges volumes, which I thought was pretty mind-blowing. Yeah, so it's very interesting. And have you, maybe Questbook or independently, seen like the success metrics of a grant program? Is it just the number of users coming in, or the not just the number of projects being built? Of course, what are some success metrics that can come off?
Oh, there are a few. So turnaround time is actually very important, which most of the grants program don't take it seriously. Polygon has run its ecosystem grants program and developer support program last year, but both of them didn't take off. With the current, there were projects where they did not get any response for a few months altogether, so they had to fix all that. And with the current grants program, they have a turnaround time of 10 to 15 days. So from your application, by the time you get your first dollar, it's around 15 to 20 days. So this has entirely fixed the Polygon grants program. Now it's kind of an autopilot where every month they get around 250-300 applications, right? And this was possible because the turnaround time was fixed. I think I did close to 450 developer grant applicant calls now. And one of the major learning was people were not disappointed that they do not get a grant, or people are disappointed when they do not know why they did not get a grant, or if they do not know if they have got a grant or not, right? These were the major learnings. People were hugely disappointed. They were never disappointed with the fund. There were instances where they have applied for a, maybe 10x difference. Like they've applied for a $500,000 grant, but they got a $50,000 grant. There were instances like this, but they were not that disappointed. They were more disappointed when, hey, we didn't know if our grant is accepted or rejected because our roadmap lies on this particular decision. So turnaround time, feedback are really important for a grants program to be run well. If these are fixed in the initial stages, the flywheel will ensure that the ethos is maintained for the rest of the grants program. But one of the key metrics to keep in mind while you are starting a grants program.
Oh, those are some amazing insights. Never crossed my mind as to, yeah, these are actual problems that you spoke about that go unanswered. And do protocols also calculate maybe like an ROI on each of these grant programs they run? Or is it like a perpetual loop?
They want to. Every protocol wants to. Everybody wants to measure the performance of the grants they are giving out, because at the end of the day they need to when they sit back on the table with all the funds, how they have been disbursed, they want to see how each of the projects have performed. But honestly, there hasn't been a solution yet. There are a few metrics, right? Like one more metric which I missed out in your previous question was milestone. So nowadays, all the grants are not one-time grants. Like Harmony has set in this culture of one-time grant. Like they used to give you a one-time paycheck of $50,000, right? Whereas Polygon does it milestone-based. Milestone-based works because they fix the loophole of people who are coming in just taking the money and not building anything. So they are doing it milestone-based. So people who are going till the second milestone, people who are going to the third milestone based on the funds is one way to track that there is progress for the projects. However, this doesn't answer your question of, hey, is this performance in turn impacting the protocol? Especially in the Web3 world, there is not such a culture where you don't track number of transactions, you don't track number of users. Like it's in a very nascent stage to come up with that kind of ROI metrics, to be honest, because everybody is figuring out, right? Nobody, like if it's in Web2 world, they would say, hey, I've given you $10,000. I'll come back to you after 2 years. Let's see if you would have made it $25,000, right? It's not the case in Web3. It's more like, hey, you've given out, built out the product. Now there's tokenization involved. So it's a different game altogether. It's honestly tough to come up with an ROI, but nevertheless, the requirement is there from the protocol. They want to measure how these grants are performing. This was also one of the reasons where a lot of the protocols shut down their grants program, because they did not have a specific ROI. They were looking to invest into these projects instead of giving out the grants. There were such scenarios, but grants is still a great way to use the funds. You should just know how to use these funds. You should be clear on your roadmap, and then you're sorted. It's just that you don't have a very clear ROI.
Understood. So if somebody were to measure the ROI, it has to be set at the ground level so that it scales while dispersing the grants, right?
Yeah, it depends, right? Like also, see, depends on why you're running a grants program. Like if I'm running a grants program for, say, I have a domain exclusively for community engagements, then I have an ROI, right? Say Ethereum would have given out a grant budget to Defolio and would have said, hey, number of applications matter to me. It depends. It depends on how do you want to run your grants program. If I'm going after community engagement, I would say, hey, more number of people who are attending a call should grow 10% month on month is my metric, right? If it is for developer tooling, I would have probably said, hey, I need to have tools to be built which are used by 1,000 Web3 developers each month, and it has to grow 10% month on month. If I'm having something like, say, dApps to be built on top of this chain, I want more number of dApps which are built should have their own token. With their own token is what matters to me. So you have to be very clear in your ROI, and every domain will have a different kind of an ROI. So which is why I think the best way to run the grants program is always to have verticals, split your grants program into domains, have your core team, ensure that there is alignment with the project which are being approved and the core team, so that you can have very specific ROIs for each domain. It's easier that way. You can't have a high level abstract ROI in like how you would have done it in Web2. Like at the end of the day in Web2, you'd say, hey, I have $1, right? Like this has to go up. here you have tokens involved, here you have token investing involved, you have tokenization for the dApps, then there is community engagement. So you'll need to have ROI specific to each of the domains.
Fair. This is very, very, very interesting. And also, I like what you said about the milestone approach. These milestones, who is it decided by? Is it decided by the protocol, or is it like a mutual understanding that?
No, it's generally by the applicant.
Mhm.
The structure is given out by the protocol saying that, hey, you need to present your project with 4 milestones, split your funding according to the milestone, and give us a timeline, give us the deliverable. Now, I had this conversation with Ilya, founder of Near, where he came up with an interesting use case where people, when he has started off a Near grants program, and he started out with this milestone, everybody has put up their first milestone as they launching it on testnet, putting it up on mainnet, right? Like the given a choice, there is always a way to play around. So of course, the initial decision is given out to the applicant, but eventually there is that two-way communication between the protocol or the review team and the applicant to make some changes on the milestone structure.
Very interesting. And I have one last question. So when these grants are generally dispersed, it is in the token of that particular protocol or that chain, mostly, right? Is there a scenario where all these tokens are just given out and there's like dumping going on or anything? Have there been situations like that?
Okay, initially this was the case. There are still a few protocols who run it this way, but there was a scenario with Polygon when the token prices went down. So the applicants came back and said, hey, we took the grant when the price was high, but this was the requirement we had in terms of, say, auditing our smart contracts, stuff like that, and paying our developers. But since the token price has gone down, I need more funding, which is when people have started giving out grants in USDC and USDT. So this was one of the major reasons. I think it's a fair reason, and which is why most protocols now do it in USDC.
Yeah, it's interesting how they won't complain when the price goes up of the token.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, but yeah, I think this has covered all my questions. Thank you so much, Harsha, for doing this. Needed a domain expert to actually come and talk about these grant programs, and this I'm sure would be super valuable to all the founders out there, for all the projects, protocols out there building.
I hope it is.
Yes, I'm for sure that these actually had some great insights. Yeah, thank you so much, Harsha.
Yeah, thanks for having me over. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Yeah, nice meeting you.
Same.